The following podcast is brought to you by the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
This that Atlanta Falcons radio show. So get up, get out, and get something. Get in the zone. We live on the DT. Tune in, cause we about to blow like TNT. Falcons Central Radio Show. We gonna be berserk, y'all heard. We ain't even tripping, catching y'all slipping. What's good, man? On the Pro Football Central Radio Network, hosted by Aaron Freeman and Scott Carr-ass sick. What? This right here is a good present for you and for my presence like I was Santa Claus, man. I'm doing it.
Welcome back to another episode of Falcons Central Radio, coming to you live via video camera. I'm Aaron Freeman, joined by my good friend Scott Karasik, and this week we're going to be talking once again about our favorite football team, the Atlanta Falcons. We're coming to you after this lovely Memorial Day weekend. Had a nice couple of days off. I don't know about you, Scott, but I had a nice weekend off, not going to work Monday. But today was Tuesday, which means you got to go back to work. Falcons had to go back to work because OTA started today, and we'll be talking a little bit about that tonight. But later we'll get into, we're going to do position-by-position breakdowns each week for each show. And this week we're going to do running backs. Last week we did quarterbacks, so we'll get to those running backs later today. But first, Scott, let me ask you, how was your Memorial Day weekend, and how are you excited to be inching ever so closely to the 2014 NFL season?
My Memorial Day weekend was spent working, selling cars and all that fun stuff. Honestly, though, I'm excited for football more than anything else at this point. The offseason is just way too long. And then pushing the draft back just has everybody hungry right now. Like, man, we want the season, we want it now, and make it come as fast as possible.
I think the football offseason is a blessing and a curse because it's so long that you, really miss football, but when football does come back, you're like, oh, my God, it's been, forever since football was on, so you get really, really hyped for the beginning of the regular season and preseason and stuff. And it's the only sport, I think, that has the off-season is longer than the season, so it makes you miss it. And I think that's one of the reasons why football might be a little bit more successful in TV-wise, because people actually miss football because it's gone for so long. Like, baseball's gone for, 3 months or something like that. It's like, season's starting up again? Oh, okay. Seems like
to be fair, baseball season is also ridiculously long, way too long.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about these OTAs. It's first day of OTAs, not a whole lot of breaking news or anything like that. Nothing big. I guess the big news today for the Falcons was that Roddy White's contract talks were stalled, I guess. And but the word is that he'll get signed before training camp. So I guess, they were in active negotiations, but because Roddy's brother died recently, they kind of put those on the back burner, let him deal with that personal issue, family crisis, and then they'll jump into contract talks a little later. So what are your thoughts on Roddy's contract situation? You worried, not worried, whatever?
I think he's going to end up signing something pretty much exactly like what good old Reggie Wayne signed. 3 years, $18 million, lots of incentives. Basically, if he decides to retire at any point, he's not going to cost Atlanta more than $1 million for that season. Just basically a really easy, simple contract like that, which is what he should do, because there's no reason for him to get crazy and go, well, I want this I want the biggest deal ever seen when he hasn't played like the best player in the league for a while. He's not a top 5 wide receiver anymore. I would say that you could argue he's still a top 10 or even a top 15, but he's not a top 5. And when you've already got a top 5 on the team with Julio Jones, it doesn't make much sense to pay Roddy like one. So,
what do you think about the new extension? Because I was thinking the same thing with him. Like the ideal contract for him is the Reggie Wayne contract, about 3 years, $6 million per, somewhere around that. But then Brandon Marshall signs this 3-year, $30 million contract. You got Steve Smith signing like a 4-year, I think like $30 million contract or something like that. So do you think that's going to raise Roddy's price tag up a little bit more? Or do you still think he's going to go on the lower end?
I mean, if Roddy's price tag ends up going from like 3-year, $21 million, whatever, Atlanta's got the money. But paying him anything more than, say, $7 a year is just way too much. Just way too much for a guy like that. And I like Roddy, but it's just overpaying for a guy who's had some injury issues the last few years.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I want Roddy to finish his career as a Falcon. I want him to go out like Hines Ward or Donald Driver, play one team his entire career. I don't want to see him go to Jacksonville or Buffalo or some team and play like 1 or 2 years with some irrelevant team or whatever. It doesn't even matter if they're relevant or not. But at the same time, I'm with you. I don't want to have to overpay because, like, you look at the Brandon Marshall deal. Roddy's not worth that type of money. He's basically what, 32 now, almost 33. He's basically got like 3 good years left in him, like 3 maybe like 3,000-yard seasons maybe, and that's about it. And then after that, he's probably a backup type of player. And so you don't want to sit there and pay like $30 million for basically a guy that each year is going to get less and less. Because about number 1 receivers, typically they play well till about their 34, 35, 36. That's when you look at guys like T.O. and Marvin Harrison and supposedly Anquan Bolden, but he seemed to be okay last year. But basically, it's around that age that guys tend to fall off, and Roddy's probably about 3 years away from that age. So it's one of those things where I want Roddy to stay, but I don't want to overpay him. Like I hope it's like the Jonathan Babineau situation, where Babineau wanted them to stay, didn't want to overpay, and we got relatively, compared to what Babineau probably could have made, we got Babineau real cheap this offseason. So that's kind of what I'm hoping with Roddy.
Well, I mean, Babineau probably would have made 3 years 15 on the open market. Roddy would probably make like 3 years 27, 3 years 30 on the open market, because you got teams out there that are just stupid. I mean, looking at you, Cleveland, looking at you, Oakland, you got teams that are just dumb, that don't know how to use their money. Now, Jacksonville would make sense for a guy like Roddy. Young quarterback, veteran to lean on, young guys to learn from him. He has shown that he is not afraid to teach a young guy because he pulled Julio under his wing. But he also understands that if another guy is doing well, that's less coverage his way, more balls his way, or the same amount of balls with less coverage. So he's not fighting 2 guys. He's only fighting 1 every play. So he's going to be more open and score more touchdowns. Guys like Roddy, they just want to make sure they're part of the offense. That's really his thing. And he still blocks like he's a rookie, which is good. I mean, like, he was a angry wide receiver blocking, which is tough to find. So when you look at it, I don't think he's going to be worth the $10 million that someone else is going to pay him to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that Atlanta will pay him around 6 or 7, and he'll be like, yeah, dude, that's great. Let me finish as a Falcon. Or maybe even a 4-year deal where the 4th year like vests to be, dead if he plays more than like 80% of the snaps his 3rd year.
Yeah, I think you could probably get him a little cheaper on like the annual money, like $7 million a year. If you up the guarantee money a little bit, I think Reggie Wayne got like $10 million on his deal that he signed 2 years ago. And you look at someone like Golden Tate getting like $14 million on his deal. So if you gave Roddy like a 3-year, $20 million, and you were like, hey, here's $15 million of that guaranteed, you know, and basically have that $15 million paid out in the first 2 years of the deal, I think that's probably a pretty good deal for the Falcons. I think Roddy would take that. It's like $15 million guaranteed, sure. You know, in my career in Atlanta, fine, that's great. I'll do that.
Yeah, and I would gladly take that if I was him. Honestly, I'd gladly take $15 million. So sitting here making, you know, I'll be lucky if I make $15 million in my lifetime.
I'll take some practice squad money right now.
Yeah, I mean, practice squad money would be great right now. For those that don't know, practice squad is $9,000 a week for 17 weeks. So it winds up being right around $140,000, which is a lot of money for a year, for 17 weeks worth of playtime.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. We've got running backs. We got good old Steven Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Emphasis on old. We got Jacquizz Rodgers. We've got the ghost of Jason Snelling.
He's always with us in spirit, yes.
May his career rest in peace.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't blame him for what happened at the end of last season. If you would have been on the team last season, you probably would have gotten caught with weed too. So.
Yeah. You got to blaze up to forget that you're on we got arrested. We were like 2-8 or something like that. So yeah, you know, just get the words out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't blame him. But yeah, just taking that out of the equation. No more Jason Snelling, unfortunately. So you got to replace him. You got Anton Smith, who arguably one of the top 5 gunners in the league, which no one really cares about gunners unless you realize that your gunners are god-awful, and then you get mad. So Anton Smith is one of the best gunners in the league. Drew Davis is one of the best gunners in the league. They're guaranteed spots, but I don't know if – the question is if they're guaranteed spots at their regular position too. I don't know if Anton Smith is with that selection of Devontae Freeman. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, Devontae Freeman is this backup long-term. The more I watch, I mean, he may not be a featured back like, you know, Steven Jackson or, you know, even Maurice Jones-Drew or a guy like Ray Rice. But he could easily be like a 60% back like Warrick Dunn was. You know, give him 60% of the carries and then find a bigger guy to complement him. And then, you know, you can still keep Quiz and just keep Quiz in like a Jason Snelling role. You know, play special teams and, you know, hey, we need you over here, Quiz. All right.
That's pretty much what they do.
I mean, that's basically what Quiz would do. Like, he's not – there are few guys who are team players like that. Who at running back specifically too, and Quiz is that kind of guy. And then I think Jerome Smith could be that sit a year on the practice squad and then come in, replace Steven Jackson, at least on the roster spot. Anton Smith is going to be out of his contract, so I could see the Falcons saying, you know what, Anton, it was great, but it's time for us to move on. That's why I like Geraldo Wildevine to take that final spot away from the guy who I haven't even mentioned yet, and Josh Vaughn. Because I think he's a better gunner. I think he's what Kevin Cohn was as a gunner, but he's also what Brian Finneran was toward the end of his career as a receiver.
Okay.
That interior guy, boxes up, you know, gets wide open somehow, even though he's one of the slowest guys on the field.
Yeah.
But not even kidding.
No offense to Finn, but yeah, he was pretty slow at the end.
I don't think Brian Finneran would complain about being called slow.
Yeah.
Like, he still got open.
Yeah.
Tony Gonzalez was slow, at the end, and he still had like 85 catches. It's okay to be slow as long as you know how to get open. Who gives a damn about the rest of it? But no, Josh Vaughn. Do you want to rant on this guy, or should I?
I'll let you go first. Let me jump in a little bit later, but yeah, I'll let you go. Give you your anti-Josh Vaughn tirade.
My anti-Josh Vaughn tirade is when the Falcons needed him most, when he was actually active for games, those, 3 or 4 games, when Steven Jackson was out and he was active, like that magical combination, he still couldn't see the field because the team didn't even trust him enough to put him on the field. They put Anton Smith out there instead. And he's not even good enough on special teams. I don't even know why he made the roster last year. You could have signed a guy off the street who would have been 10 times better. Hell, I don't know why they traded up into the later part of, I think it was the later part of the 5th round for Stanley Mapanga last year. I think that was a wasted pick. Why didn't they just take Andre Ellington there? That would have been more useful.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't have to worry about Josh Vaughn.
700 yards he had against us in week 9 or whatever it was. But yeah, I'm with you on Josh Vaughn. I'm like, he's an okay player. He's a journeyman number 3 tailback. I don't understand why he made the roster. To me, he's kind of like the player he reminds me of is Michael Turner, but like the old Michael Turner, and like not the guy that can run over people still. Like he's like the type of guy, like in a straight line, he can run pretty fast. And if people recall from last preseason, he had a couple of breakaway runs that were like perfectly blocked. He hit the hole, boom, 20-yard gain or whatever. But like he doesn't really break any tackles. He can't move laterally at all. Like if he has to make a cut to try to avoid a defender, he's going down. It's going to be a 2-yard gain at best. And then he, on top of that, he was downright terrible on special teams last summer. And then when he got the opportunities in the regular season, he wasn't much better. So it was like, why is he on the team? Like, if he's not, he just doesn't have any upside. Like, if the Falcons didn't have Jacquizz Rodgers, if they didn't have Jason Sterling last year, if they didn't have Anton Smith, Anton Smith is my guy. Like, he's arguably the fastest guy on the team. All right, he's one of the best gunners on the team. All right, every time he touches the ball, he pretty much got like a 40-yard gain last year. And so he's like, if the Falcons, I wrote an article last week about how the Falcons' offense is flawed because they don't get a lot of big plays and they need to adapt their play calling to generate more big plays. Meanwhile, they got this guy named Anton Smith on the roster, and they're like not giving him the ball. Like every time he touches the ball, it's like a 50-yard touchdown. It's like, hey, Dirk Cutter, maybe you should, I don't know, give him the ball maybe more than once every 2 months or something. I don't know. So, like, I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me that Josh Vaughn made the team. I don't really see any chance of him making the team this year. I'm with you on Jerome Smith. I don't see him making the roster, but Jerome Smith has a lot of Snelling attributes. And I just think he probably needs a year, maybe 2 on the practice squad, kind of hone it together. And, you get a guy that can be that sort of backup running back, maybe short yardage guy. I don't see him being like, he's not going to pass Freeman. He's not going to pass Quiz if Quiz is still around. And, I'm an Anton Smith guy, so he's not passing him. But, 3rd or 4th running back on the depth chart, I think Jerome Smith has what it takes.
And that's all he really needs to be. Just that last guy who makes the roster. And I do think he's a good bit better on special teams than our boy Josh Vaughn is. So,
the other thing about Jerome Smith, and then we'll segue this into the fullbacks, I think he has the potential that you could probably say, hey, Jerome Smith, put on 10 or 15 pounds, And you can be just like Jason Snelling and play both running back and fullback when we need you, you know? And that was the beauty of Snelling was, and I personally, I thought he was underutilized in terms of the lead blocker, because every time Obi was hurt over that, 3 or 4 years where Obi was running back, anytime they put Snelling in there for a game or a quarter or whatever, running game didn't skip a beat. I think Jerome Smith could be that sort of guy that sort of, he can catch, he can block, he can run, he can play special teams and just be that sort of role player. And, down the road, people know that I'm not a huge fan of fullbacks, or at least drafting them. But it's one of those things like if your fullback can give you plus value as a receiver or runner or on special teams, then he's giving you something else. And I think Jerome Smith potentially, because of his ability as a runner, can give you that kind of Justin Griffith type of value as a mainly lead blocker, potential runner, short yardage guy, whatever, down the road. So.
I have trouble disagreeing with you there because when I saw him running at Syracuse, he wasn't overly impressive to me as a running back, but he was the guy who would gain some good yardage pretty quickly, and he would do those Josh Vaughn runs, but he would also have his standard 3 yard in a cloud of dust to 5 yard gain that everybody loved because that was his standard carry. Every single carry, 3-4 yards, 3-4 yards, 3-4 yards. Then he'd bust one for 20. Then 3-4 yards, 3-4 yards. That's what you want. You want that guy who's going to just grind away at a defense, bust a big one, and open it up for the other guys. And I think Smith can be that guy. I think that's essentially what Steven Jackson's going to be this year. Honestly.
Yeah.
3 or 4 yards. Now, the offensive line's 10 times better than it was last year.
We can only hope.
Huh?
We can only hope.
I mean, we at least know that they're going to be competent pass blocking.
Yeah.
And Mike Tice does like to use more zone concept than Hill did.
Yeah, we're both in agreement that they need to use more zone runs.
Well, I mean, Tice does.
Yeah.
You don't bring a guy like Tyson if you want. Now, it's not like zone blocking Denver Broncos style.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though.
It's zone blocking 97 to 99 Minnesota Vikings style when Robert Smith was the best running back in the league, arguably.
Mm.
You had Robert Smith, you had Garrison Hurst, you had Terrell Davis, and Jamal Anderson. Those were your guys.
Mm.
And the only guy out of that entire group that played in a regular power blocking scheme was Jamal Anderson. I honestly think Steven Jackson would do better in a zone scheme like that than in what he was playing in St. Louis, which was the disgusting, nasty Paul Boudreau style. And that just didn't work for him. But Steven Jackson, Jacquizz Rodgers, Devontae Freeman, I think honestly Devontae Freeman is going to be the feature back in the future.
It's going to be interesting because to me the ideal role I envision Freeman in is the sort of Giovanni Bernard role, where he kind of splits reps with Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, and Cincinnati. Because Bernard plays more passing downs, and he plays like 3 times as many passing downs for everyone that Green Ellis does. So he ends up over the course of the season playing a lot more. But I think you kind of have to, split the carries in terms of, or you probably give. I'm rambling, but basically Green Ellis gets more rushing attempts, but Gio touches the ball more because he's involved in the passing game, and the law firm doesn't play passing downs. I think with Freeman, you kind of envision him. Let's give him those passing down reps. Let's give him a couple of touches a game, but we don't want to give him 15 to 20 carries a game because he'll wear down over the course of a 16-game season. He's just not built to be a 250, 300 carry running back. And then you got to find somebody else that can be that Green Ellis type of guy that can get 10 or 15 carries a game and keep, in Cincinnati, Gio fresh, and in Atlanta, it'll be Devontae fresh. I don't think that guy's currently on the roster. If Steven Jackson was about 3 years younger, he'd be that guy. Or he could be that guy this year, but next year I don't see him being around, so they're going to have to find someone else who can be that guy.
This is where I think Atlanta is going to let Quiz go next year. I think they're going to let Quiz go. I think they're going to let Smith go. I think they're going to let Antone Smith go. And I think, much to your chagrin, unfortunately, but I think it's his last year with the Falcons. I'm sorry. Let it sink in.
I'll be okay.
I think Antone Smith is gone. I think Steven Jackson's gone. I think Quiz is gone. That leaves, and Vaughn's obviously gone. So that'll leave Jerome Smith from the practice squad and Devontae Freeman. But when you look at next year's running back class that's coming out, you got Melvin Gordon out of Wisconsin. You got Travis Green from Bowling Green State. You got Jay Ajayi from Boise State. Tevin Coleman out of Indiana, who's one of my personal favorites. Yeldon from Alabama. Jamal Williams from BYU. Gurley out of Georgia. And then everybody's favorite, at least everybody that I was with around last year, for all the football games, Mike Davis, the Gamecock, who looked a lot like Mike Turner with receiving ability.
Well, I think a lot of our listeners are like, wait, why are you not talking about Gurley a little bit more? Because obviously a lot of our listeners are Georgia fans. And,
okay, I love Todd Gurley. I don't want to be in position to draft Todd Gurley.
Oh, okay.
You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
If Atlanta's in position to draft Todd Gurley, they should do it because that's going to be their biggest need. Because the offensive line should at least have 4 solid pieces next year. At least. If not 5. Because I think right tackle, whether Baker's healthy and plays left, or Matthews is, or Baker's not healthy and Matthews plays left, and our good buddy Lamar Holmes plays right. I think either way that happens, I think the Falcons are good at right tackle. At left tackle, I hate to say it, I think they're better if they have Matthews at left and Baker at right. But it's going to be the Falcons, so it ain't going to happen.
That seems to be the case, yeah. Pretty much. This is the year we finally get rid of Sam Baker? No, it's not the year.
If Baker can walk, Baker will be starting at left tackle, is the way it feels. So, I hate to say it, but the best thing that could possibly happen for the Falcons' offensive line this year would be for him to have, just a nagging injury that, doesn't really hurt him as much. I don't want him to, be in severe pain, but I want him to have, just that nagging knee injury that every week he's questionable, and then he misses, 8 weeks in a row. For, the first 8 weeks. And then the Falcons are like, well, we're already set because, Matthews and Blaylock and Hawley and, Asamoah, that left side is set. But, Baker, you can play right. That's what I want. And then Baker has a career resurgence at right tackle and shows he's worth his contract. Now, if he does that, if he shows he's worth his contract at right tackle, he's worth the money. Because it doesn't really get too bad until year 7.
Good luck with that.
As long as he can pass block well at right tackle, which he can do average at left, so I'm sure he can do great at right. Because you're not facing the same kind of pass rushers on the right side. Mm-hmm. And you've always got more help on the right side. So I think he would do better there. And then he's getting old, man. He's making $6 million this year. You know what Tyson Clavel was set to make going into last year? 7.9 for a right tackle. That's a lot of money. And then next year he's making 7.3. He doesn't hit the Clavel mark until 2016. So if he shows he's worth the money, I don't see why you don't just let him play his contract out. If he shows he's worth it at right tackle, and then by the time you have to pick up that fifth-year option for Jake Matthews, you're talking 2018, where Atlanta's got a projected right now $101 million in cap space, which you got to count all the draft picks and everything. Atlanta's going to be able to budget it properly. If Sam Baker is still competent in 2018, he's worth keeping.
Okay. You know, the words worth keeping and Sam Baker being in the same sentence, it's just kind of hard for me to say those words.
I'm trying to be optimistic.
Well, you know,